Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Monday. Alyssa Orange alongside Mike Irwin. Time for another Ask Mike.
This is going to be a brain buster.
Okay, and
Two really tough subjects to deal with. A lot of controversy.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got my head spinning.
I figured between last week, men's basketball, just got a lot of questions. Hopefully, we can calm some people's nerves and make people feel a little bit better. So let's jump right into it. Our first question is from Red Hog, who says, "What the heck, Joe Fouche? We lost a defensive captain to the portal. Do we know why?" Mike.
Okay, let's first deal with the speculation as to why, as opposed to the actual why, because the truth is, unless Joe Fouche walked in here and told us, we wouldn't know for sure why. We think we know why, but let's talk about the internet why. And the first big rumor was he got stolen by another school because of a better NIL deal, and that really touched it off. Oh, Arkansas is terrible on their NILs, or we're getting our players stolen. And if he got stolen, a bunch of these other guys that are leaving probably got stolen too. So they mixed up two different things. Other guy transfer portals versus him transfer portal. He's a starter. He's a captain. I don't think they expected him to transfer, as opposed to the other 13 or 14 that they sort of encouraged to leave. So fans went nuts over that and tied the two together. Okay, and then the other rumor was that he left because, and this got really crazy, he left because of a defensive coach, Coach Carter, the cornerbacks coach. They didn't get along, and he's mad and he's leaving. But this was a problem with a bunch of coaches, and a bunch of these guys that are leaving is all a result of mean coaches, and Sam Pittman's going to run some guys off. Okay, that part, bogus on the coaches being run off. Probably what? Partially true about Coach Carter.
We know that Coach Carter is tough on his players, but he's kind of one of those old school hard-nosed coaches that's tough on you, but then also high praises you. So, you know, you're going to get a little bit of both. And there are also some words on the street of, you know, obviously their coaches from the previous staff were much easier on them than Sam Carter is. And
you didn't get results with the coaches for the previous staff. So you're asking yourself, if you're seriously transferring because of that, why don't you go back and look at where this secondary was 2 years ago?
And we don't know if that had anything to do with Joe, per se.
Right. But we do know that this is what the rumor was.
Yeah.
This is what the rumor was, and we think there was some partial truth to that. Okay? However, we also think that, at least what I've heard is that is one of the deepest rooms on the team, that secondary room. They've got a lot of people, but and let's mention that Jalen Catalon, who sat out about half the year with injuries and announced he was coming back before all this, which was great news, because he could have gone to the NFL. He said, look, I wouldn't be coming back if Coach Carter were a problem.
Right.
He's not a problem. So when you get a guy with Catalon's stature saying that, it kind of stifled all the rest of that. So that kind of calmed all of that stuff down, per se. And so what we're left with is, yes, a captain left. Yes, he was a starter. They didn't expect it, but it's not a disaster because they got a deep room there. There was no guarantee that he would even be the starter next year, as much talent as they have back there. So there's some other reasons why he possibly transferred. And they're not going to be up a creek without a paddle. It's not like if K.J. Jefferson left and all of a sudden you don't have a backup for him.
Yeah.
So that's the deal on Fouche.
All right, here we go. We got two questions that are kind of similar, so we're going to ask both of them first before you answer it. Pig Daddy Kane wants to know what's going on with the transfers from the secondary. And then John with a similar question, what's going on with all these guys, Fouche and Brooks mainly, hitting the portal? Is there staff problems, attitude problems, NIL offers from elsewhere? Rumors in Brooks' thread, and MMQB says
Monday morning quarterback.
Thanks.
Hogville.
Thanks. And maybe 2 or 3 coaches may go. What gives? Is it sour up there, or is Pittman moving guys on so he can replace them with better?
So what you've got in that question is everything. Everything that was on Hogville.
So what is it?
Every possibility. And we've added now Sam Brooks into the equation. So
Greg Brooks,
Greg Brooks. So you got Carter. So you've got 2 guys now that were starters that are gone. Now that's a cause for concern.
Sure.
But the same thing, I'm told, applies to him. He's not irreplaceable. They're not totally upset about that.
He lost his starting job and then ended up gaining it back.
Got it back. So what about all these other issues that are then discussed in that question? No coaches are leaving. That was one of the hot rumors. Sam's not going to put up with this. He's got some bad coaches over there that are running these players off into the portal, and we're going to get, they're going to be in trouble, and he's going to get these guys to come back. None of that was true.
Yeah.
Again, you got about 16 in the portal. I mean, you talk to different people. It's 14, 16, 15, or whatever. All but 3 of them were people that they basically kind of said, probably be a good idea if you went somewhere else because you don't fit into our plans. So you're talking about 3 guys. And again, the
one guy you've said who went into the portal, they wanted so bad they talked him out.
And that's another key thing. Jalen St. John, an offensive lineman, he entered the portal because he felt like he didn't fit in. Maybe they wanted him to go somewhere else. What did Sam Pittman do? He immediately talked him out of it. So that ought to tell you something, too, that Pittman didn't run in there and start trying to talk these guys out of leaving. Now, here's another key. Before he ever left for Tampa, if you'll remember, there was a press conference where he said all of this. Sam Pittman said, we're going to have a bunch of transfers after we get back home. And most of them are because we need guys to leave in order for us to complete our recruiting class. And that would be a combination of guys coming out of the portal and also more people you're adding to your signing class.
And also, I think we sometimes forget about this COVID year really messed with roster juggling and figuring all of that out with your scholarships as well.
Exactly. So, again, looks a lot worse than it is. No, nobody got stole because of NIL. There weren't a bunch of people mad at coaches. There might have been 2 that felt like they didn't fit in well with these coaches. I think Sam Pittman took the attitude, if you don't like my coaches, they're the reasons why we got to the bowl game. I'm not fixing to make any changes to them to accommodate you. So I think all of that has calmed down a little bit. And I think that what really helped, again, was Jalen Catalon saying what he said. That guy carries weight.
Oh, yeah.
And if he comes back and he says, I would not have come back if there were a problem with Sam Carter.
Yeah, he didn't have to go out on Twitter and make that statement, and I feel like Jalen, being a leader, that he has felt it necessary to say that, maybe as a message to maybe some of his teammates who were on the fence of whether or not they were going to leave or stay, and Sam Carter was getting raked through the coals.
He was.
And for Jalen to come out and really, again, kind of send a message indiscreetly to maybe some of his teammates, but also to support Sam Carter, I feel like that was a really big thing for him to do.
And doesn't this almost amaze you? We have this team that most people, including me, felt like 6 games would be a cap.
I thought they were going to be 5 and 7. I'm glad I was wrong.
If they could win 6 games, I thought, okay, you get to a bowl. Even if you lose the bowl game, you've won 6 games. That's pretty much where I left it. And I think a lot of fans felt that. They win 9 games. They beat all these people they weren't supposed to beat. All of this stuff happens. They end on a really good note, and then 2 weeks after the bowl game, or less than 2 weeks, you got people freaking out. Coaches need to be fired. They don't know what they're doing. We're going to get into the NIL thing later, but our NILs are terrible. They don't know what they're doing up there. Isn't it amazing how this all falls apart so quickly with some people?
Yeah.
It's like, the football program's in deep trouble. Really?
Yeah.
What trouble?
I feel like people, again, I said this yesterday in our Pig Trail show. The transfer portal, people love it when it gives and they hate it when it takes. And you'd have to have a very even keel approach when it comes to the portal.
And the fact is that almost all of those guys, all but 3 of them, they wanted them gone.
Yeah.
So you're talking about 3 guys that left in the portal. And so what? Because that didn't happen last year, this year it becomes a disaster?
And there are going to be ebbs and flows. I think with this transfer portal, we're kind of going to see it around college football. Arkansas is kind of experiencing it right now. But I was reading and listening to some things. There was like over 3,000 players at the moment in the transfer portal. Like, this is not an Arkansas-only problem. Again, you've talked about Oklahoma and their quarterback, and he decided to up and leave. And again, Texas A&M, Zach Calzada is going to Auburn. Bo Nix went to Oregon. It's pretty wild out there. And it's just the college football as we know it.
You talk about a freak out. What if KJ Jefferson left? And he could have. We've seen other quarterbacks do that.
He could have.
I'm going to talk more about that later, but my goodness. No.
Yeah.
things are not falling apart.
No.
Things are looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, I think it'll be okay when the dust settles and everything.
I think it's okay right now.
Yeah,
I really do.
All right. Alex for Hogs 88 says, I am starting to get really concerned about the max exodus of defensive players. Hopefully we've eased you a little bit, but Mike will kind of try to ease your pain some more. I'm hoping we get things sorted out and bring in upgrades in those positions from the signing class and the transfer portal.
Well, look at the key word there, mass exodus.
Yeah.
It makes it look like a whole bunch of people that they really needed took off.
Yeah.
Most of that so-called mass exodus were people that they said, hey, you know, you kind of need to go somewhere else if you want to play. So there's not really a mass exodus of players that they really needed. And as far as bringing in help, I mean, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm told by Otis, who is our recruiting expert, that this was all going to fall into place come signing day. There will be some more portal people that will be brought in. They're not really ready to talk about it right now, but they'll take steps to solve some of these issues. But they were doing this before these guys left. So they're going to bring in some portal people to solve some problems, maybe need some guys on defense because that's where they lost defensive line, linebacker maybe. But that will all get resolved. The key is to stay under that 85 or stay at that 85 scholarship limit, and that's where it's all balancing out.
I feel like right now, as fans, as members of the media, all of this is coming out, and it's freaking people out in a bit. And then you think that, oh, the football team might be freaking out too. When we were in Tampa for the joint press conference between Sam Pittman and James Franklin, talking about guys opting out, James Franklin goes, look, you guys are hearing for the first time things we've known for weeks. And this kind of feels like a very similar situation where us as the media, you all as fans, are hearing things for the first time that Sam Pittman and his staff have known for weeks or at least a couple days or have known was in the works. And this is not a surprise and a shock for the football program over on the Hill like it is for us sitting here as players are announcing left and right, it feels like. So I really thought that was a very interesting comment from James Franklin, and I think back to it, it kind of makes you feel a little bit less panicky.
It explains a lot.
It does, and you forget those guys over there know a whole lot more than they ever release, and they get paid to do what they do for a reason. Okay. LZH says, this NIL deal seems to already be out of hand. Have you heard anything about some type of regulation or at least some sort of guidelines? As of this week, it's even more like the Wild Wild West, and it's only getting worse.
All right, let's talk about, now we're into our second big subject here, which is NIL. That's the other thing people are freaking out over. So let's talk about, that's an apt comment, Wild Wild West. There are only two basic regulations right now governing NIL. Number one, you as a coach cannot go out and offer, you can do it, but it's against the rules for you to offer somebody a specific deal. So, for instance, the kid that was going to Florida State but ended up going wherever he went.
Jackson State.
Okay, wherever he went. If Deion Sanders actually said, we're giving you $1.5 million, then that's a violation. Okay. So that's one rules violation. You can't tell somebody what you're going to give them before they sign. You expose them to it after they've already signed. You can say cool things like, we've got a good deal up here, we're doing really good, you're going to be fine, but you can't give them the specifics. The only other rule in place right now is you can't tie an NIL deal to specific performance. So, for instance, KJ Jefferson couldn't sign an NIL deal with a company and he gets more money if he has 30 touchdowns as opposed to 25. You can't do that. Those are the only two basic rules.
The university has that rule where it can't conflict with already like sponsorships with the U of A.
We'll get into that too because that's a question.
That's a university rule. Okay. Sorry, I jumped ahead of myself.
Okay.
Okay.
So again, we've got no rules basically except for those two. Now, why does that exist? Because these guys kind of got caught. You know, they're not really ready for this. And this is what's the problem is right now. There are all kinds of things going on, and we see new stuff every day, and there's rumors of things happening. And I think you got a lot of people behind the scenes that are sitting back and taking all of this in and saying, what are we going to do about this? Right now, they're not doing anything.
Well, there's a lot of loopholes. There's a lot of ways around these two rules.
But I think what's basically going to happen is you're going to see eventually the NCAA, with input from the member institutions, sit back and say, wait a minute, okay, this is a problem, that's a problem, we're going to have to do something about it. Now, what are the kinds of abuses that they're going to be looking at? Okay, I was told one particular by somebody that knows. I was given one example of something they think is going on. You get a booster, a big booster of your program, and he comes in and lays a huge multi-million-dollar endowment into the athletic department for NILs. Well, wait a minute. NILs are supposed to come from companies that are paying these guys to endorse their products. So how does that work? Aha! What they can do then, the athletic department can say, okay, we've got 4 charities out here, 4 nonprofits, and we're going to distribute this money to 4 nonprofits, and we're going to have 4 of our athletes be the spokesman for those companies. And it makes it look really good. Oh, we're helping nonprofits. But all you're really doing is a booster is coming in and throwing down money and saying, here's the money, let the player take it, which is not what NIL is supposed to be. That's an example of an abuse that I think is eventually going to be, there's going to be a rule against it. You can't just give the money to the athletic department. It has to come from somebody that runs a company.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's an example of one type of abuse. There's a lot of others. And again, I think they're sitting back right now and kind of looking at all this and saying, well, what's going to happen here? What's next? What's going to happen over here? Wait a minute, what just happened over there? Is that an abuse? Let's look into that. I think I was also told that the NCAA is already investigating some schools for violating that one rule we talked about where you can't give a specific deal to somebody before they sign because they feel like there's a bunch of schools that have already violated that. So they're investigating them and they're going to nail them for doing it. So we'll see. We've heard this kind of stuff before.
Okay.
But
I'll believe it when I see it.
I would say before you get more regulations, how about enforcing the one big one that they're violating right now?
Yeah. We'll see. All right. Mizzou Man says, will the NIL rule hurt or help the Razorbacks in future recruiting?
All we can do is give you a snapshot of where they are right now. And what I'm told right now is NIL they feel like it's helped and hasn't hurt. You won't get this people on message boards or on some of them on the internet to agree with this. They're already claiming Arkansas is being really damaged by this. The people I've talked to say right now they're in good shape. Otis Kirk, our recruiting expert, tells me again that their recruiting is the best that it's been since the mid-90s. And he says NIL is a part of that. So you can't say Arkansas's NIL is not working if you're having a great recruiting year. Now, you got people on message boards going, Irwin, you're crazy. It's as rotten as it always was. This is the way our recruiting has been right here where it is right now for the last 20 years. That's not true. But you can say that if you want to be negative. So right now, I'm saying the snapshot in time as it exists right now, NIL is probably helping, not hurting. Doesn't mean it will stay that way.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of complicated issues out here. Schools that are just going to pump huge amounts into their NIL, and it's going to become all about money. And then what do you do if you're trying to do more than that, if you're trying to help athletes? If you're Arkansas and you're trying to, your flagship program, which governs this, you're trying to make sure they pay their taxes and don't get into some kind of tax trouble. You're trying to help them along the way, but you're not just trying to figure out ways that they can make wads of money. Now, School X over here may just be all about money. What happens when that player gets into trouble and owes a bunch of money on taxes and he faces going to jail? Is somebody going to be able to bail him out? Just, oh, here's some money for those taxes. I don't know, man. You get into some real complicated issues.
That's the one thing with the NIL is the whole business side of things. So we'll see how it all plays out. All right, Blood Red Hog is back. Another NIL issue. He says Hunter Yurchik tweeted about Arkansas's $1 million NIL program and the fact it isn't to be used as a recruiting tool. The rumor is Texas A&M arranged $30 million in NIL deals to land its current recruiting class. Does Hunter understand he is fighting a losing battle?
First of all, I think he misunderstood what Hunter meant when he said we don't use it as a recruiting tool. What he meant was
we're not breaking the rules.
We're not breaking the rules to do that. We're not out there telling people you can make this amount of money before you even sign with us. What we're telling them is that we have a flagship program that's very well organized, and we will help you once you get here. We'll help you find an agent that will work with you. We will help direct you in certain, we will help make sure you understand all the legal things you have to do, but we're not just throwing money at people. Now let's get into the A&M $30 million thing. First of all, I think that's overstated because the way it appeared in the newspaper, and A&M's never said this. This was stuff that was being reported about their recruiting. I don't think they actually put $30 million into this class, which turns out to be the #1 class in the country, because if they did that, all schools have about 4 recruiting classes on campus at one time. So does that mean they're actually going to have, when it's all said and done, $120 million in deals for their 85 scholarship athletes?
Yeah.
$120 million for 85 athletes? Are you kidding me? That's over $1 million average for each of these guys. What schools are going to be able to sustain that? So I think we're talking about a $30 million war chest total. Okay, that still makes Arkansas's look puny, $1 million. So what are we going to do? We're getting behind. We're already behind. Oh no, A&M, boo. Well, I don't know. Obviously, if that's true,
that Texas A&M money, they always had it.
Arkansas is going to have to up their money. Right. But this is a point I want to make, and this is what fans need to understand. Because you typecast these athletes. You make one guy takes $1.5 million and goes to a place he really wouldn't go otherwise. And then all athletes get labeled as being just money hungry. That's one guy. I'll tell you a story I was told about KJ Jefferson. He has actually one of the lowest monetary NILs on campus because it's not a big deal to him. His deal is he likes his position coach. He feels like that position coach can get him to the NFL. He likes Arkansas. And he just wants to get better. And he's not running around worried about his NIL money. I was told he even got offers from other schools that were offering him a much better deal, and he could have left, and he didn't. Look at Bumper Poole. You don't think Bumper Poole, after what he did when he decided to come back, couldn't have made a lot of money going somewhere else? He didn't do it. Not all of these athletes are motivated by money. I want to go all the way back to Darren McFadden. No NIL in Darren McFadden's time. But Darren McFadden, during the he could have been the most heavily recruited player from the state of Arkansas. Maybe he and Mitch Mustaine, I don't know. Everybody wanted DMAC. But he let these other schools know right off the bat, I'm not going to your school, leave me alone. Okay, I'm going to sit here and tell you, and he's not here to say this, but I'm going to tell you, if NIL existed back then, it wouldn't have mattered to him. He would have said, I don't care what you offer me, I'm going to Arkansas. And there's a lot of players like that.
You know who I think falls in that category too? Bobby Portis.
Yeah.
Bobby Portis was going to come to Arkansas no matter what.
There's a lot of guys like that.
A lot of guys.
And not all of them are from the state of Arkansas. Bumper Poole's not. I mean, you get players that come in here from out of state.
Traylon Burks could have gone wherever he wanted.
Wherever he wanted, and he came here. So even if we're talking about this huge amount of money that A&M's supposedly throwing around, I don't know that it just automatically means that you can't get good players, because there are going to be players that don't look at that totally. They're still going to go where they want to go.
I also kind of want to say this too. I don't think, you know, as we talk about guys and NILs and what matters, like they're not a cookie cutter role. It's like these guys are money hungry, these guys aren't, because there are some athletes, you know, with recruits. We all know this, that might not come from a lot, and so that money can help so, you know, it isn't like, oh, I'm hungry, let me see dollar signs. It's, oh, this can also get me a college education, but I can also help my mom or my family or my grandma or my kid, my sister. So, like, I think it's more of just like some of these kids, that motivation is encouraging for them. It's not like I'm money hungry and I want all these things. You do have the opportunity to help mom, dad, grandma, brothers and sisters, whoever it may be. So you can't fault the kids who do take the money. Does that make sense?
Yes,
you know, like it doesn't make these kids bad and these other kids, you know, not bad. It's just kind of the way it's all playing out. And we're so early in NIL right now that it's kind of hard to see and like sort things out. I just didn't want to come across as us saying like those kids, you know what I mean? Because I think that is important.
I just wanted to make the point that
Sure.
not all of these athletes will be motivated by
Right.
the amount of money you can throw at somebody.
Exactly,
Now,
100%.
I will also close with this point. I've been watching A&M since I was a kid. I never liked them. Didn't like A&M, didn't
I don't
like
like
Texas.
that. You should. Can I tell a story? This goes on the internet. So Arkansas was playing A&M, and I have an uncle who went to A&M, and so my uncle and my son are pretty close. And I said, Finn, what do we think about the Aggies? And Finn goes, the Aggies are booty. They're booty butts. So that's how we feel about the Aggies in my house.
So what did your uncle do? What does his uncle do?
Oh, he just says gig 'em, you know.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me just say that I've been watching these guys almost my whole life, at least 60-something years.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've always tried to have an edge. They're always coming up with something that's going to help them win a national championship.
Yeah.
They've won one since the 1950s. All this time that I've been watching them, they haven't won. Most of the time they underachieve, like this year. What happened this year? Remember, they started off terrible, and then all of a sudden were really good because we beat Alabama. And if you read all this stuff, the Aggies really thought they were going to the SEC championship game. They thought Alabama was going to lose to Auburn, and they were going to sneak in, and then it didn't happen. And then what happened? They lost to LSU.
Yeah.
So A&M always finds a way to mess up.
Hey.
I'm just telling you, I don't care how much money they throw into this thing. I don't think they're going to win a national championship because of money.
Look, A&M stole my alma mater's head coach with basically a blank check, thinking he was going to win them a national championship, and I ain't seen nothing yet.
He's got no better record than the guy before him.
Yep.
So it just things sort of stay the same at A&M. They've got enough resources where they're pretty good. But win a national championship, I'm going to have to see that to believe it.
Yeah. All right. Cody Bird says, I have heard that a rule is in place that prohibits the Hog student athletes from making NIL deals with university sponsors like Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt, etc. Is this true? If so, it is a rule set by the U of A or the NCAA. If set by the U of A, can they change it for NIL purposes?
Okay, this is something you mentioned before, and I had to go look this up. And actually, Kevin Traynor at the U of A directed me toward the flagship website, and they have a what's called I'm not sure what they call it. It's
like a contingency.
Well, it's more like a guideline. I think it's not. They don't list it as a rule, but it's guidelines for NIL flagship program at Arkansas, so athletes can understand what they can and can't do. And there's one guideline in there that says this. Let's take a look at it. NIL agreements cannot conflict with an agreement of the U of A unless specific permission is given. And I think that's where he's coming from on this.
Right.
Okay, I called over, and this is what I was told. We all know that the university has an agreement with Pepsi. Okay, let's say KJ Jefferson walks into flagship office one day and says, hey man, Coke has offered me like $500,000 to be their spokesman. Then they would have an issue because it conflicts with the agreement that the university has with Pepsi.
Right.
So they would have to get permission from Pepsi, and they probably would deny it. Another example they gave me.
Sure.
Let's say Devo Davis comes in and says, hey, I've been offered a deal for Converse if I'll promote Converse shoes. Well, wait a minute. Athletic department is a Nike. Nike's probably not going to let him do that. So these are things that probably aren't going to come up, but they could come up. I'm told that this sort of thing would be very rare, and what would happen is if it came up, the people at the flagship program would say, well, we can't let you do that, but let's look at where else you can get a deal, and they would help them in that situation. Now, he specifically mentioned Walmart, Tyson, JB Hunt, or whatever.
Companies, yeah.
I was told there is nothing in there.
We had this conversation.
There was nothing in there that would prevent somebody from doing that. However, it's a little bit unlikely that Walmart is going to take a Razorback athlete and say, you're our Walmart spokesman, here's $1 million.
Right, and we talked about this the other day. It's almost, everyone says, oh, there's so much money in Northwest Arkansas. You have Walmart, JB Hunt, Tyson, Sam's Club, whatever. They should be throwing NIL money. Well, here's the problem, and you threw out Coke and you threw out Converse and Nike. These national brands do not benefit right now from NIL deals with college athletes.
Right.
Think about Walmart. And if Walmart Walmart can partner with the University of Arkansas, that's a little different. But are they really going to give money specifically to just a KJ Jefferson? What is KJ Jefferson going to do for Walmart? That's a global brand right now. These companies are almost too big. Now, what Walmart should do, or, what Tyson could do, or whatever, is then there are vendors here. Exactly. Maybe get vendors,
Get the vendors to do it.
Tyson in the golf, where at the Blessings, where, both of the Tyson, you would think, owns the Blessings. That is where the university golf teams play. You would think, if this all made sense, why isn't Johnny Tyson already throwing money at, Julian Perico or Brooke Matthews or whatever? It's for the same reason. So, they're almost just too big of companies. Go find your car dealerships, your golf galaxies, whatever it is locally that can help these race about. Exactly.
Restaurant,
yeah.
Petco or PetSmart or whatever.
Something that's a little bit not, these are global brands.
If I'm the CEO at Walmart and we are in a board meeting, and we're discussing whether or not to have an athlete represent Walmart, I would want the Heisman Trophy winner, whoever he is. I would not want just to pick somebody from the U of A, because Walmart is a bigger company than just Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. They bring people in from all across the world.
So I don't think
that's the catch-22 with where Arkansas is located with the big Fortune 500 companies who are here is. They're a little
so the bottom line is there's nothing in there that would prevent this, and I was even told there is a U of A athlete right now that has a deal with Sam's Club. So I don't know what it is, but there are ways to do this, and I think what you're saying is probably on target. It would more come from Walmart vendors and offshoots of that.
Yeah.
But we still get back into the same issue, which is right now Arkansas is at $1 million total dollars. If A&M's really at
30 million,
then they got some work to do.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays
I don't know
out.
if it stays that way, but that's where we're at right now.
All right. Slobber Slob says, no, it's not too early to ask. Opening up the season with Cincinnati and then BYU thrown in later is 9-4, a reasonable Christmas wish for 2022.
Well, first of all, let's talk about this, because the first 2 years under Sam Pittman, I don't know, I think everybody, including me, was going, what is the deal with the schedule? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then this year, when you ended up with Georgia on there again, there was almost an outrage. What's going on here? So we all kind of thought, well, okay, the good thing about 2022 is the schedule will get easier. Okay.
Yeah.
I've looked at it. I will tell you that the 2020 SEC schedule does look a little easier, primarily because you're playing South Carolina here instead of Georgia at Georgia. So that alone makes it an easier schedule.
Yeah, they got Spencer Rattler there, though.
Yeah, I know. But,
okay, all right.
And then, maybe Widow Wayne Kiffin loses his quarterback. And Ole Miss has to come here. Maybe that's a win where it was a loss. What about Auburn? They've got a lot of problems right now. Arkansas might beat them next year.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that as I look at the SEC schedule, I'm going to say it's a little bit easier. Non-conference? Are you kidding me? You're talking about a team that was in the national championship playoff, and now you got to play them in a non-conference game?
But I think they lose a lot of their players.
Okay, hopefully. But you look at that and you go, what's going on here? And then BYU, they beat 5 Power 5 conference teams this year. They ended up 10-3 and beat 5. They're not a Power 5 themselves, but they beat 5 Power 5 conference teams.
They're an independent like Notre Dame, right?
Yeah. So that looks pretty daunting. It's certainly tougher than a normal non-conference game. Then you got Bobby Petrino. Well, he's going to come in here and go, I'm getting you guys. You fired me. I'm getting you guys. So that's a little bit of a concern. And then, I've forgotten, Ole Miss's ex-coach. Come on, what's wrong with me?
Oh, Hugh Freeze. Liberty. Liberty, right?
Yeah, he's at Liberty now.
Yeah.
So here's Liberty. And again, so what's going on with all these schools? Well, the answer is it's not Hunter Yurachek sitting in his office going, let's see how I can make the schedule tougher for Sam Pittman. Why would he do that? These deals were all made several years ago before these programs were what they are now.
Right. That always happens.
I'm going to just label this as bad luck. Bad luck. However, when I look at the original question, I say to myself, is 9-4 reasonable? I think so.
Yeah.
if you've got your SEC schedules a little easier and the non-conference is tougher, what if they win all those non-conference games? And
That'd
they
be
might.
nice.
And
Yeah.
then the SEC schedule. So, yeah, I think nine wins is doable next year.
Do you remember that soundbite that Sam Pittman said after they beat Penn State at the Outback Bowl? And he was up there on the podium talking about something about the schedule, blah, blah. He goes, yeah, you know, you Arkansas head football coach, you look at that schedule and go, whoa, who's trying to fire me?
And now it's the same thing next
I
year.
just kept thinking about him saying that over and over and over in my head while you were answering that question. Okay, moving on. Team Otis is thinking higher than that. He wants to know, will next year's football team do better than 9-4, Mike?
Okay, so exactly. This is what a lot of fans think. Well, man, we made this great improvement in year one.
Sure.
It's even better improvement in year two. Why can't we keep this up? Here's what I would say about that. And I'll refer back to something we already mentioned. About this time last year, I said 6 wins for this team. You said 5. So we were both wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure anybody wants my advice on whether or not 10 wins is reasonable. But I'm going to say 10 wins is a stretch, maybe. I'm going to say, with all of the things that we don't know about, I feel more comfortable saying 9 wins.
Okay.
But 10 wins is possible.
Okay. Terrell Morrison wants to know, what did Stetson Bennett mean when he told Feinbaum they're not going to change up and go all Arkansas on us? They're not going to do that. They're going to be Alabama.
I don't think it was an insult. I think, and we don't have Stetson Bennett here to answer that question, but I think he was referring to the fact that toward the end of the season, and specifically in the LSU, Alabama, and Penn State games, Arkansas changed up its defense quite a bit. They changed their pass rush. They blitzed more. They changed their coverages up. They threw some curveballs at those teams, and it worked. And I think what he's saying is he doesn't expect Alabama to try and curveball them. They're not going to do what Arkansas did. They're probably just going to say, hey, we're Alabama. This is what we do. Try to beat us. And I think that's what he means rather than insulting Arkansas.
Yeah.
I think he's just referring to the fact that Arkansas changed a lot of things up toward the end of the season.
He was here for the Burlsworth Trophy Award. Maybe he just was saying they're not going to go all Grant Morgan on us and beat us.
Okay. Well, we don't know. The answer is we don't know specifically what he meant, but I don't think he was insulting Arkansas.
No, I made that up, by the way. I thought that was funny. Okay, to basketball, where Lamont 7906 asks, why is Muss not having more players move without the ball? Both Likes and Jackson Robinson should be learning to play without the ball. They are too stationary unless they have the ball.
Well, I would say it's not just those two guys.
No.
I would say at any given time it can be anybody, because it's really not the entire game. When you watch this team, there are times when they have the ball and there's good ball movement and it looks really good, and then there are times when you're looking and you're going, you got 4 guys glued to the floor. What's going on?
They're
here?
like watching J.D. Note play
It'd be
instead
like,
of playing.
man, I'd hate to have the ball in that situation because nobody's moving. Really what struck me was watching A&M move without the ball. Their guys. Oh, my goodness. And they did it for like 15, 20, 22 seconds. They're all moving around, keep moving, keep trying stuff. It's just what Arkansas doesn't do is they don't sustain anything. I'm talking anything. I don't care what you're complaining about. There are examples where they do it well, like shooting. They go through periods where they shoot well. Usually because they get people open and in good situations.
Yeah.
They go through periods where they score inside points, usually because they're running their offense well and they get somebody inside. They go through periods where they're playing good perimeter defense because they're working at it. And they go through periods where they shut off the lane because they're working at it.
Yeah.
Then they go through periods where none of that stuff happens.
Yeah.
I referred to it yesterday as this team plays like it's got attention deficit disorder, which is a real thing with people. I don't think it's a thing with a basketball team, but it's the closest analogy I could come up with. It's like they can't focus on a task for very long. Oh, I'm playing defense here. Yeah, I'm playing really hard. Oh, I've been doing this for 20 seconds. Oh, I'm tired. You know, I don't know. That's what it looks like. We're not in their heads.
We're not.
But that looks to be the number one problem with this basketball team is there's a lack of consistency. Look, they've lost these 2 games, but they had a chance to win both of them, in spite of playing some horrendously bad basketball in the middle of both of those games. They still came back.
Yeah.
So there is hope for this team. It's not a lack of talent.
Yeah.
It's a lack of any kind of consistency that keeps you from getting down 15, 16, 17, 18 points.
Yeah. True. Sorry, my nail's breaking. I got distracted. I'm like the basketball team. I could only focus
exactly.
on
You weren't
for
focusing
10 to 20
on what I was talking
seconds.
about.
And I got distracted by my fingernail. Sorry.
That's a good example of what we're talking about here.
Let's keep rolling. Walt wants to know, do you think the basketball warm-up is a distraction to this generation of player? While I like the idea of bringing it back to honor Coach's father, maybe this group needs more time on fundamentals and team chemistry, not juggling basketballs.
Well, I don't think it hurt, and I don't think it was what was wrong with this team, but they did stop doing it.
They did.
Because it's a bad look.
Yeah.
I think Musselman understands you can't have a bunch of guys out there before the game looking like the Globetrotters when they're not playing like the Globetrotters. So,
Right.
yeah, they got rid of that. They're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. All right, GMAR54 asks, do you see any similarities between this year's basketball team and last year's basketball team?
I don't. I really searched my mind. What's similar? And I'd rather talk about what's not similar.
Yeah.
Again, they don't have a point guard like Jalen Tate. They don't. They don't have an inside guy that can rebound, score, play defense in the paint like Justin Smith. They don't have that. They don't have a Moses Moody one-and-done player that's going to play consistently every night, an NBA talent guy. They don't have that right now. They don't have a consistent three-point shooter. They don't. They don't even have anybody that scores consistently. Sometimes Note does and sometimes he doesn't. He missed 7 straight shots in that A&M game after scoring like 15 points early in the game. So they don't have the sort of things that they had last year. They don't have what I feel like is leadership out there. And I think they had 2 or 3 leaders on the team last year. It's one of the big complaints, no leadership, nobody taking charge. So you don't see that. Maybe the similarity is they got the same head coach. That's the only thing I can think of, because in every other respect, this team is completely different so far from last year's team. Last year's team ran into a rough spot and got out of it. This team hasn't been able to do that.
We're about to see. Yep. We'll finish with a football question. Pat Boat wants to know who was Arkansas's most feared player in games and in practice from a fight, tough hitting standpoint.
I think there are 2 of them.
Is that just in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just toughness on and off the field, in and out of practice, everywhere.
Okay.
And I have to name 2.
Okay.
You got to go all the way back to them. And I didn't see either one of these guys play in person. I was just a little kid when the first one played. And we're talking Billy Ray Smith Jr., or Sr., Billy Ray Smith Jr.'s dad. The old guys, many of whom aren't even around anymore, that I talked to when I first got here about Billy Ray Smith Sr. First of all, he was a Golden Gloves boxer and a good one. Secondly, you just didn't mess with him at all. And I'll tell you a quick story about how they felt about him. There was a player on that 54 team that beat Texas, the 25 Little Pigs. They weren't called 25 Little Pigs because they were little people. The team only had 25 guys on scholarship. And they still won the Southwest Conference Championship and beat Texas in Austin to do it. So I'm talking to a guy that was on that team, and this has been years ago. But he was talking about what made that team so good. He said, it was the tough coaching staff. Bowden White's coaches, they carried razor straps around and put them in their back pocket. And if a player hit the ground in practice and didn't immediately bounce back up, they would just start whacking them with razor straps. And he's making it sound very dramatic.
Okay.
That you got these coaches just beating these players in practice.
Great.
Okay, so a few years later, I'm at a Cotton Bowl. And George Beckett is there. Now, George Beckett is Jay Beckett's dad, Jake Beckett's grandfather, Chris Beckett's dad. He's the first Beckett to play for Arkansas, and he was an all-Southwest Conference guy, and he was on that 54 team, and a tremendously funny guy to talk to. He was always at basketball games, bowl games. He'd always come around the media and keep us laughing. So I run into him outside of practice at one of the Cotton Bowls, and he's standing out there, and so I start telling him what this other guy, which was one of his teammates, said about Bowden White and the razor straps. And he looks at me and he goes, "What?" He said, "Do you understand who was on that team?" He said, "Billy Ray Smith Sr. was on that team. I would like to see the assistant coach that would hit him with a razor strap. He would be wearing that razor strap up his." So that's all you need to know about. This is from one of Billy Ray Smith Sr.'s teammates. He was a total guy you had to respect and fear if you messed with him. So that's the first guy.
Okay.
Then you go about 10 years into the future, and I didn't see this guy in person, but I knew him really well after I got here, and that's Lloyd Phillips. Lloyd Phillips was a defensive lineman, started 3 straight years. In those days, you couldn't play as a true freshman, so he started every year that he was eligible to play here. He was on 3 teams, and he never lost to Texas. He's the only guy I know of like that. There might be a few more, but he always bragged about that, that he never lost to Texas. And he was from Texas. He's very proud of the fact that he never lost to the University of Texas. The stories about that guy on the field, total, you didn't want to mess with him. And then off the field, he was a terror on Dixon Street. I heard a story not long after I got here from a guy who claimed to have seen this happen, and you know about these rumors. But he claims that Lloyd Phillips got into a fight in the Deluxe Cafe, which I don't think exists anymore, on Dixon Street, and threw a guy through a plate glass window out onto the sidewalk. And he said the cops came, and they took him to the police station, but they didn't arrest him because this happened a lot. The routine was you just sat him down in the lobby, and then you called Lon Farrell, who was Frank's kind of troubleshooter guy, and Lon Farrell would come down and say, thank you very much, and take him back to the dorm and chew him out, and then they would run his butt off in practice for 2 or 3 weeks to punish him for what he'd done. So he's a wild man. Now, the interesting thing about Lloyd Phillips is he went to the NFL briefly, but after his career was over, he became a kind of I think it was an assistant principal on the junior high level, a school administrator. And he totally changed. If you were around him, he was one of the nicest guys I've ever, no sense of anger, aggressiveness, or anything like that. I was told those kids loved him because he involved themselves in their problems. Kid comes to them, he's gotten in trouble, they get sent to him. He doesn't pull out a board and beat the kid on the butt. He's talking to him about what's causing his issues, and he's helping him through it. And he's telling him, hey, look what I went through. I've been where you are. And I got rid of all that stuff. You need to do it too. So he's a great guy. I miss him. I miss talking to him. And those are my 2 totally bad blank Razorbacks.
Nice. Well, a great question to end on. And you know what? Done this a couple times. It's been a while. Where's our guy, Said 76?
Well, he just took a break this week.
Okay, Said. All right, good.
Because I was like,
I love it. I love the new guys. I just feel like I haven't read a questions from Said.
You got a lot of freak out guys, and so they just
a lot of panic button. Hit the panic button. Hit the panic button.
We're here to
calm you down.
Mad at me because I'm trying to point out certain things. Oh, you're wrong about that.
Yeah,
their recruiting class is no good. It's just average.
Yeah, hopefully they feel better. All right, that is going to do it for this week's Ask Mike. We'll see you next week.